what is the locals' perspective on affordable housing in the Wildwoods? How do they view the balance between tourism and affordable year-round living? Do they? I mean, their houses that they own are going up, which is nice, but at the same time, it might be harder for their kids to buy a house near them or something like that. What is that relationship like?
Yeah, well, you're spot on with that. I mean, I think what you're seeing is if somebody's living on the shore year round, and let's say they've even raised their family here, um, for children to for children to then buy in after the fact is becoming less and less of an opportunity. So what you're seeing is that you'll have a lot of families. What they'll do is they'll move offshore and they'll own property there. They'll raise their kids. There's more space. They're raising their kids there, and then they might move back to the shore later on. That's one facet that you're kind of seeing. The kids are older; they're off doing what they're doing their thing. What you'll also see sometimes is that if you have people living here year round, kids get older. The kids may be buying a property that's just offshore. You know, one of the smaller local towns right here, getting themselves into like a rancher or something like that, just to get themselves going in life, get their feet underneath them. And then a lot of times what I've seen is they end up keeping that property. They keep it as an investment. They'll use it as a rental property or Airbnb or year rounder, and then they'll buy back on the shore. And then they might be in a condo or something like that. But now they're at the age where they have their kids, and they want them to go to the same schools. They want them to have the excuse me, the surfing experience, or they want to have the boardwalk experience. But they're able to buy back because now they're a little older and get their feet underneath them. You're not really seeing too much where it's they're raised here and then they're in their 20s, their early 20s, and they're buying their first property here.
Um, and do you feel like a general local sentiment of people being upset that prices have grown so rapidly, or are people more glad that they did because they own?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. The people that live here already, they're glad that the prices have jumped up the way that they have. And when we talk with them, their general response is always just, "Well, where would I go next?" And if you're not leaving the area entirely, that makes sense. Then those people are not making a move. They're tending to just stay in their properties. What's been nice about that is that, and we'll see this trend happen again once the rates start to come down, is those people are putting money into their homes now, and they're kind of doing their upgrades and their fixings because that's where they're going to stay. What will happen is in a couple of years when the rates start to drop, is those people will then sell off later on. So they've now paid their mortgages down. They're going to have more equity in the property, and they've done upgrades, so there's going to be more value there. So there's actually a win there for those people that don't make the move right away. Is it more challenging for people to buy into the market now because the values are up? It is. And that's everywhere. So a lot of people have been priced out, but look, we're selling homes every single day. We don't have an influx of inventory where now all of a sudden homes aren't selling, so we could say, geez, everybody's priced out. It's not the case. Someone can afford to buy a home and someone's going to buy it when it's listed for sale. There's a ton of money out there. People have it. So it's happening. We're also seeing down in the Wildwoods in this area, in this area specifically, is a lot of the other shore towns are priced even higher. So you have more of a collective of people that are priced out of Ocean City, Sea Isle, Avalon, Stone Harbor. They just can't afford to buy there. So now their concentration is down in the Wildwoods, which has benefited that area dramatically. There was an interesting statement someone had made a couple of years ago. They said the billionaires were pushing the millionaires out of Stone Harbor and Avalon. Well, the millionaires were going someplace, so they were going to Sea Isle, Ocean City, and Wildwood Crest. So those values went up. So all those people started to move into North Wildwood and now the Wildwoods. So everything's pushing the values up. It does push certain people out, which then the shore communities or the the primary home communities have benefited greatly from that, because that's where a lot of people are buying their second homes from. And when those people buy those second homes, they're not leaving them as the single family homes that they were when they bought them. They're putting a lot of money into those homes, because if they had $600,000 to spend and they couldn't find a single family home on the shore, they spent $400 offshore and put $200 into it, which automatically helps that neighborhood. So you're seeing a ton of that. North Cape May benefited from that and the villas greatly over the last 4 years. So there's people that are upset, but I can tell you more than likely, if they're upset because they feel The values have now priced them out. My question to them would be, well, how long were they looking? Because if the prices priced them out 4 years ago, they were never buying anyway. Because they're always waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and prices are going to continue to go up. And the people that sit there and say, I'm going to wait for the prices to come back down, I don't foresee that happening.
What, if anything, would cause that to happen? Is there anything you would predict would cause that?
Yeah, honestly, World War. I mean, I hate to be that blunt with it, but a world war, economic crisis in the United States, for sure. The reason I say that so bluntly is that we don't have inventory. This real estate increase in value has been a natural increase in value from the standpoint of economics 101. We have very limited supply. There's a lot of demand. A lot of people want to own a property at the beach. So that is automatically pushing values up. We still see it today that when you have a property come on the market and it's a little bit maybe below market value or right at market value and it's in really great shape, we are still having bidding wars 5 years later because there's not a lot of inventory. So until the situation becomes where we have anywhere between 6 to 9 months, which is a more balanced market of inventory, then that's when you'll start to see prices drop a little bit. But they're not going to drop by 50%. That's just not going to happen. And we're just not there right now. And if all of a sudden the interest rates drop again, like they're predicting, now all of a sudden we still don't have inventory. It's only going to cause our prices to get pushed up more because people are going to be battling more and more for that. Because you have new buyers coming in and you have all the buyers that have been waiting now for the last 2 or 3 years because interest rates have been so high, waiting for them to drop. They're going to come back into the market. So now all of a sudden, now you have two groups of people fighting over the limited inventory that we have left, which is going to force prices to go up. So, again, it would have to take an economic crisis, like happened in the early 2000s, for the prices to just fall out dramatically. And that just right now is not where we're at, because this was a true market surge. If you remember back in the early 2000s, it was a false market. We had a lot of inventory, and yet homes were selling like that. Like, you couldn't even get a sign in the yard, and you had multiple offers, and values were going through the roof. No one could afford them, but values were going through the roof, and people were buying properties based on their word. And so that was a false market, where this market here is a true market surge. So it's not a bubble.